But when we were younger, there wasn't as many opportunities as there are now, and especially for women, right? Yeah. And so for me, it is really important to me to kind of shine the light on some of those opportunities for women so that they can come behind us, because I really feel like they have a lot to say, and some of them are really just getting their voice now.
Not every battle has a success story, but every success story has a battle. Hi, I'm Tia Minzoni, CEO and co-owner of luxury private jet company Stella Jets, a serial entrepreneur, a survivor, and your host of the Fight to Fly show. On Fight to Fly, I sit down with the world's highest achievers who share their incredible stories and lessons they've learned on their own fight to fly. Expect to be inspired, entertained, and motivated to break down the barriers between you and your high-achieving success story. Come back each week for a new episode and be ready to empower yourself to give your dreams wings. Welcome to the Fight to Fly show. On today's Fight to Fly show, we have Patty Farmer. Patty is an award-winning marketing and media mogul. She has a magazine. She is an international speaker, just a force to be reckoned with, has been doing it for a long time, helping companies and CEOs make the best that they can out of their business. She's a seven-figure event producer, and we are so excited to talk to her today on the Fight to Fly show and hear her story. So welcome, Patty. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. You and I have had some really good conversations recently, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have her on my show. And then, just hearing how you started and where you're going and all the fun things you've done. We could probably do a whole series just on you. So I'm really excited to have you and to get to have some conversation today.
Thanks so much. Yeah. I'm excited about being here, and just, conversation's great. And I mean, just the topic of your podcast is fun. Right?
Yeah. Awesome. So with you and I, we met and instantly clicked because we both have marketing backgrounds and we're both excited about aviation. And you also have a podcast and a magazine, all things that just really light up my heart, right? So I would love to just let you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, because it's probably their first time meeting you. Maybe not. You are an international speaker. Some of them have probably seen you before. But tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Sure. So I think the thing for me that's really exciting is I love women. So I'm going to start by saying that. So I have 6 daughters. I come from a family of 5 girls. And so all while I have grown up, it has always been like, what can I really do to help women? Like, what can I really do to help them pursue their dream? Because, as you know, that a lot of women, when they're out there building their business, if a guy can't make it to Johnny's basketball game or soccer game, everybody's like, oh, bummer, right? But if mom doesn't, then she feels guilty, and she's sometimes thinking, oh, maybe I should go back and get a job, right? And so for me, that just doesn't work. That just doesn't work for me. And so early on for me, it was like, what can I do to help women to really be able to not give up on their dream, right? To really be able to think about what is it they really want to do, in their gut, and how can I help them to do that? Which is why I do so many things. Because I feel like it's almost like having a distribution channel. You get that, right? You have all these different assets and all these different things because everybody doesn't take their information in one way. So you have to be everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. How'd you get started?
Well, that's kind of really funny, little brief story. So I come from Las Vegas. That's Nevada. I come from Las Vegas, Nevada. And I originally was in the mortgage industry and the marketing industry. Had 2 separate businesses. Okay. They kind of really overlapped, right? Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Dallas in 2008. And everybody knows what happened in 2008. And it happened in one day, literally. And I think you'll really understand it. But when we were moving to Dallas, everybody said, oh, it never breaks 100 and it never snows. Liars.
Yeah, who lied to you?
Right, exactly. And so the day we got here, which was in March, right, it was snowing. And as I'm sitting in the living room waiting for my furniture to be delivered, looking out at the snow, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I come from Las Vegas, right? We don't even know what snow is really. And I just thought to myself, oh, here I am. I have these 2 companies, and now here I am, and I don't know one single person. And I was having kind of a pity party. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I just thought to myself, Patty, put your big girl panties on. This is an opportunity. And that day I told myself, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I don't know anybody and I live in a metroplex now. And in 1 year, I'm going to know 100,000 people and I'm going to make $100,000. And I made that decision that day. I did it in 9 months instead of a year. And that was like the beginning. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, good. Now I'm in a metroplex, but how am I going to go international? And that kind of happened by accident, as a lot of things we do, right? Yeah. And I never looked back.
You said something really profound, right? And it's that you made a decision. And so many times we complicate things so much, and all it takes is really making that decision. Like, I'm going to do this and nothing's going to stop me. You know my story when I came to that decision and how I got to Stella Jets. And, we especially as women, but as just humans, we put so much weight into every single decision. And how can I? And really it all comes down to just making the decision that you're going to do it and nothing's going to stop you. So I love that you said that.
I think what happens is when you make a decision, once you decide and you've made that decision, once you accept that, well, now you have to find a solution because there isn't anything else, because there is no quitting, right? You made a decision and now you have to figure out, like, what's the solution? And I can't even tell you, every single decision that I have made me money because there was no other option. Like, what else could I do? Like, it had to, and I just had to figure out how I was going to do it. And sometimes that was on an airplane, and sometimes it was just sitting in my office. Sometimes it was in the shower, right? You get your best ideas. But the thing is, what I think a lot of times happens for people is they get an idea, and that's all it does. And I don't believe God gave us ideas to sit in our living room.
Absolutely. Agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're supposed to, like, do something with those ideas. Yeah. And so I would say that one of the things that I feel, and it really is who I like to work with too. Like, I am a decision maker, an action taker, and a rule breaker. That's who I am, and that's who I like to work with too. Right? And I think that when you decide that, you can be decisive. Some people are wishy-washy and they can't make a decision, and that's why things don't happen.
Right.
And then they don't take action.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that also comes with confidence, self-confidence. And, I think I was maybe born with a little too much self-confidence. I'm just kidding. But a lot of times we're the biggest thing that holds ourselves back, right? So
absolutely.
It's, we have all these excuses and all these reasons that we can or can't do stuff. And when you really break it down, for me anyway, it was like a mirror. I was like, wait a minute, every single one of these excuses, no matter how valid, and many of them were really valid, all of them, the main obstacle was myself or my confidence or my belief in myself. And so, I think that's great. I think having the confidence to, and being accountable to yourself, that when you say you're going to do something and you do it, it gives you more self-confidence because now you can trust yourself. And a lot of times, people are like, who do I trust? Or where's someone I can trust? And we have to be able to trust ourselves first. And I think that gives us a lot of confidence to actually keep moving forward. The more we keep our word to ourselves, the more confident we get and can do things, right?
Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, if I could just find another me, right? If I could just clone me, if I could find another me. But I think one of the things that I think is important is when we talk about taking action. Now, obviously, we want massive action, right? We want massive growth, right? But as long as you're moving forward, sometimes those steps were small, like little baby steps, right?
Yeah.
But as long as you're taking them and you're moving forward,
yeah.
I think that's all that really needs to matter is, although I do believe that, a goal without a deadline is just a wish,
right?
It's just a dream, and you have to have a deadline.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we kind of do. Like, a lot of times people worry about what other people are doing or competition. Mm-hmm. I feel like the only competition you really have is you in the mirror, right? I just want to be the best version of myself, and I just always want to be improving myself. And not that we don't have setbacks.
For sure.
Right? It's like dust yourself off, get up, and just say, okay, well, that didn't work, right? But it's important to know what not to do too, right? So, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, now how can I do it and make it work?
Right.
And then we don't have to do it by ourselves too, right? It's true. We surround ourselves with the right people. And so I feel like, I don't really love cliches, but that cliche of it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
I'm like, if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a tribe to build a business. So build your tribe.
For sure.
But be careful who you build it with, right? Because sometimes we can just get excited and stuff, and then they're not the right people. So if we're intentional, that's an important word for me, is being intentional in the actions that I take.
Yeah. Intentional is huge. And, you and I both are familiar with David Meltzer's book, and he talks in there about relationship capital. And you're talking about, one of your main things was not just to make $100,000 or whatever, but to meet 100,000 people. I think I'm repeating that right. Mm-hmm. And there's two things to me that I think have the highest currency rates and rating to me, and probably to most people. One is relationships, and the other one is time. Because no matter how much time you spend, you can't get it back, right? So I think relationship capital is so huge, because you can't do everything on your own. And if someone's just starting out and they're starting out on their own, that's okay. But make it a point to not just make money, but to make intentional relationships, because that's really what's going to get you further. And with that, making sure that you take your time budget as seriously as you take your money budget. What do you think?
Oh, I actually agree with you. One of the things I've been quoted for the most really is, I truly believe at my core that, we meet a lot of people. That's just a contact, right? Mm-hmm. It's not even a connection yet, right? It's just a contact. The only difference between a contact and a contract is that R. And that R stands for relationships, right? It's just one letter, right? Yeah. Contact, contract. It's all on building the relationships. And like you said, it's the capital, the equity that we build. Yeah. I always like to tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, think about it, if relationships are the currency in today's business environment, for sure, right? So how fat's your wallet? Right. Think of it like an ATM. Are you making more deposits or more withdrawals? Right? And so you really have to be thinking about it, just like how we make our money. We kind of have to put, deposits in first, right? And then our money grows. And that's how it works with relationships too. Absolutely. Deposit before you make a withdrawal, right? Because a lot of times people just want to, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And it's like, no, really, it's like, what can you do for them first, right?
I love that you said withdrawals and deposits. And there's a lot of talk about, the people that come into your life because they want to kind of suck the energy from you and don't put anything back in there. Seen a lot of podcasts about it and TikTok videos and all that, about energy vampires and just being intentional with who you spend your energy with. But, when you and I first met, it was, hey, we have these things in common. And then our second meeting was, how can I help you and how can you help me? We were both on that. And I think that that's such a strong point, is don't just go out and find people that can help you, but go out and ask how you can help them.
And not only that too, but I really feel like, everything that we do, I'm in marketing and media, right? So that's a huge umbrella, right? And so I always like to say that it isn't about competition. I don't even believe in competition. I think it's an integrity issue. Either you have integrity or you don't have integrity, right? Yeah. And I have a lot of people in the marketing space who say, oh, Patty, you specialize in this. Right. Can I bring you in with my clients? And even if one of those clients said to me, oh, Patty, I didn't know you do this. I'd like to hire you for this. I wouldn't take them as a client, right? Because technically they're my client, right? So you don't have a reputation if people can't trust you. True. And that is in your own space of whatever industry that you are in as well. So I feel like, for me, integrity and loyalty are like my core values. Yeah. And so you can find those things out about somebody pretty quickly. And if they don't have that, I don't really care what else they bring to the table if they don't bring that to the table first.
For sure. Love it. So you and I are probably a little bit further in our career than some people that'll be listening to us. We're still babies, but we're a little bit more advanced maybe than some. And so I love that you're giving these points and tips, because it's stuff that I wish I would have learned at a younger age. It took quite a few stair steps for me to get to a point in my staircase where I look back and go, oh, every single step, every stumble, every job, everything has been leading me to where I am now. And I think when we're young, it feels a lot like, you go up and then you go down, you go up and then you go down. Like you said earlier, as long as you're moving, keep moving. And I think, nothing's ever going to go exactly as planned. We have a saying here at Stella Jets, my company, that, if something doesn't not go as planned at least once a week, then we must be in the matrix, right? Because nothing's ever going to go always as planned, but it always goes. and it always goes in the direction that it should, even if it didn't go in the direction that we planned on it going. So I just love that you're dropping all these seeds for the people who are, coming behind us, right? Because eventually we'll hand over these roles to the younger generation, and it's just powerful to have those lessons early up. So I'm just, thank you for being so transparent about that.
Absolutely. I really feel like it is important that we're kind of like the beacon, right? Because really when we were younger, I mean, not that we're not still young, but when we were younger, there wasn't as many opportunities as there are now, and especially for women, right? Yeah. And so for me, it is really important to me to kind of shine the light on some of those opportunities for women so that they can come behind us, because I really feel like they have a lot to say, and some of them are really just getting their voice now, right? They're just getting their voice and being confident enough to kind of speak up. Yeah. Right. And not just say, oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, you can have your own ideas. Yeah. And you don't have to agree with what anybody else's. Because I really believe, I love having conversations with people who don't think like me. Mm-hmm. That is like the funnest thing. And I think the best ideas come out of conversations where everybody has a different perspective and a different insight. And I also think that if you're the CEO of the company, you really need to keep that open, because otherwise people are just going to shoot ideas. And I don't think it's really about all of the ideas. Mm-hmm. There's this thing that I really love. You know how people like to talk about brainstorming? Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh yeah, we have to brainstorm. And that's always been something. It's kind of like when it used to be really popular to multitask, and now they want you to focus. Right. Well, brainstorming really sounds fun, because I know I like to do it with myself. But the fact of the matter is, it's not how our brain really works. Mm-hmm. So really, it's about question storming. Mm-hmm. So when you have a group of people together, if you say, oh, let's talk about ideas. Well, first of all, not everybody wants to throw out the ideas, because what if the boss doesn't think it's a good idea, right? But if you just say, oh, we're going to question storm instead, and you just think about what are the questions? Well, everybody has questions. Yeah. And then once you get all the questions, then as a team, you can start thinking about the solutions. And I have found that has opened up so much more for me to not just feel like you have to do ideas. I'm an idea generator myself and a dot connector. That's why I say I'm an idea generator and I'm a dot connector. Yeah. But with that said, really, honestly, there's so many ideas. Yeah, for sure. But how do you take that idea and put it in action? And I love it when people say, oh, I want to disrupt the marketplace, right? I love that. When somebody says that to me, like, that makes me so happy. Like, let's make your own space, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look what you did. I mean, like, how many women are there that own aviation companies, right? Like, you just stepped into your own space, and you could have just said, oh, women haven't really done that, so maybe I shouldn't do it. I should go be a assistant CEO or work under a man that's a CEO. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, because I'm not saying there is. Yeah. However, really, we could be opening up that space, and you are. And I think that is super powerful. So whatever ideas somebody has, I love it when somebody comes to me and says, oh, I have this idea and nobody's ever done it before, and I don't know if it can be done. Probably can't. And they kind of do that. I'm like, well, why can't they? Right. Or when they say this, this one's my favorite. So Patty, I know you're in marketing. Like, can we have some think outside the box strategies? And I'm like, well, why is there even a box? I don't even think there's a box. Like,
where's the box? I don't see a box.
Like, kick that box to the curb. Right. Like, there is no box. Yeah. So those are like limitations that we think, but this isn't, we're not living in the time of our parents. Right. Right.
Which times is great. Changed. Right. Because when we were growing up, it would be really hard to look around and find a woman CEO. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have TikTok, social media, all that stuff when we were growing up. And so at least in my life, I didn't have a lot of executive women or even business women that, were examples for me. My grandmother worked out of the home her whole life for an oil company as an accountant. Mm. And that's probably the most stable woman in a business role that I had around me, right? So there were a lot of stay-at-home moms and so on and so forth. And I love one that now we have the internet, because every child out there gets to see so many different versions of who they can be or who they can be inspired to be. And there's so many women before us, especially in aviation and private aviation, pilots, executive leadership. And we know that they had to fight really hard to get where they got.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be really irresponsible of us as women to sit back and not say, hey, these doors you open, I'm going to kick them completely off the hinges for the next generation. So, you're doing that with a very powerful program and influence. And I hope that I can continue to do the same.
I think it is really a powerful thing right now. The things that we think about, like here's like an example, thinking about the people who are going to come behind us, right? Mm-hmm. So people think it's really funny when I share this thing that for me now, like for my 6 girls, right? So I have grandchildren now. Every single time my grandchildren are born, on the day they're born, I literally buy their domain with their name, mm-hmm. their .com. I literally go to all the social media channels and get all the social media channels in their name, mm-hmm. right? So that they'll have them. Like my grandchildren, it's like their Facebook is like the old-fashioned baby book. It's like an old-fashioned baby book, right? So they have all those things and they have their domain name. Like I was really lucky that I was able to get my domain name with my name, and so many people can't. And maybe that won't be right. There's a lot of different extensions now, right?
Yeah.
But I think that one of the things we need to think about is where do we need to spend our time? What are the things we need to do? So I think that if I was a woman and I was starting my business right now, the most important thing I think I would tell someone is to make sure you know where you're spending your time. Time freedom is so important. And like you said, you don't get that time back. Mm-hmm. And here's one of the things that I find that people do a lot is they get up in the morning, pour themselves coffee or whatever their drink of choice is, and then they sit down at their computer and they open their email. I guess the last thing. Mm-hmm. I always say, like I'm part of the 5 a.m. club, right? I get up early, but whether that's 7 a.m., 8 a.m., whatever that is to somebody, and I pour my coffee, the last thing I do is go to my inbox, because my inbox is everybody else's agenda for me.
Right.
Right. And I don't want to be a firefighter. I'm not a firefighter. I'm a CEO.
Right.
And then you become a firefighter, right? So I always decide who is my very most important client, and that's me. Yeah. Right? So I sit down and decide, what is it that I need to do? What is it that I want to do? What are the income generating activities? And we should do those in our most productive time. And for me, that's morning. Sometimes it's afternoon for some people. But you need to guard that time. And I think a big jump happened in my income and in my influence when I started doing income generating things in my most productive time and I love talking to people. And I used to start my day having all those relationship building calls. And now I do it in the afternoon because that always excites me. But I can do that on my couch with my puppy in my lap, right? Yeah. I'm doing things that generate income. And as you grow a company, we have other people that we're responsible for too. Yeah. That they, what we do affects, their life and their job and their income and stuff too, though. So it's not just us. So I think that if we get habits and we get used to those habits and we think through what I call a CEO mindset and decide that, no, I'm a CEO, not a firefighter. Yeah. That in itself will literally steer you so much in the right direction.
Yeah, love it. So I don't want to get off of this subject too strong, but I really want our listeners to hear about how you became an international speaker and your own fight to fly. And in that role specifically, because you do so many great things, but I love that story. So do you mind sharing?
No, I don't mind. So it's kind of really funny, even looking back now, but even though I was a trainer and I did all these different things, I just didn't want to be a public speaker, as a lot of people don't want to be a public speaker. So I didn't want to be a public speaker either. It wasn't really my path, I thought. And I had a friend who called me up and said, Patty, will you come down to Austin and speak? We had somebody step out. We really need somebody to come in and do it. And I was like, no way. And she said, oh, come on, Patty, just talk about networking. Talk about how you're connecting. Tell your story about what you did when you moved to Dallas. So she kind of twisted my arm and I said I would do it. And this is kind of the funny part. As we are driving to the event, she says to me, oh, Patty, by the way, I kind of need you to talk for an hour. I'm like, wait a second, you said 30 minutes. And then she said, oh, and we're going to video you. And I'm like, what? And then she says, and Patty, I need you to kind of be funny. I'm like, I'm not funny. I'm like, I'm not funny.
No pressure.
I'm like, what do you mean be funny? She's like, oh, well, people like a little bit of humor. And then when we get there, she says, oh, and Patty, you can invite them to take the next step if you want. I'm like, what? And literally, I was sick. I went to the bathroom and I was violently sick. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And then I just kind of told myself, okay, Patty, like, what choice do you have right now? You are
Right.
here. Like, suck it up. I made the decision. And actually, I think that day I made the decision that I was going to survive. That I was just going to survive. So I go out there, I'm starting to speak, and I'm kind of looking at the people. And literally, there were only 46 people. So it wasn't like there was 200 people. It was 46 people. And I'm looking at them, and I see people leaning in, which is always a key that people are paying. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not doing too bad, right? You know. And then she held up this sign that told me that it was the time that I could invite people. And I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I mean, literally, I'd been in business at that point for like 15 years. So it's not like, come on, Patty, right?
Right.
But so I just literally stood up there. And if you see the video of it, it's just so funny compared to now. But I literally just said, you know, if you'd like to continue and have me teach you anything, you know, just let me know. And long story short, when I got done, 37 people handed me their credit card.
Wow.
And
out of 46.
Out of 46.
That's amazing.
And I said to myself, oh, and when I got back, my husband had texted me and he had said, well, how'd it go? I said, I think I rocked it because I'm going to learn to be the best speaker I've ever been. And so that was in Austin. I live in Dallas, right? Mm-hmm. So I went home and made a decision, another one of those decision things. I made a decision that I was going to. I thought, oh, speakers must make $1 million. I thought all speakers made $1 million, which is not true. So I just started contacting all the speakers that I knew and said, oh, kind of tell me what the tips. But what was really funny is one would say this and then the other one would contradict them, you know, because everybody does it their way.
Yeah.
So 4 days later, I put out the word. I said, okay, I'm in marketing. I'm going to put out the word that if anybody wants me to speak, let me know. And I kind of meant locally, like I was really going to like baby step it again, right? You know, baby steps.
Those plans we make.
Those plans we make, right? And so I got a call from a friend who said, hey, I hear that you're speaking. I love what you talk about all the time about LinkedIn and how you convert and how you're connecting and do it in a not salesy way. And she said, we'd love for you to come and speak. And my husband was sitting across the room from me and he's like, you said you were going to say yes to all the opportunities that came your way. So I was like, okay, yes. I'm like, when is it? She said, tomorrow. I'm like, what? She says, I need you to get on a plane. I said, to where? She says, to London. I was like, what? She said, oh yeah, they'll pay you $10,000. They'll let you sell something and we'll pay all your expenses. And I said, oh, well, I'm not getting on that plane until they pay me the money because I couldn't believe anybody would pay somebody $10,000 to get on a plane. And I was like, oh, no, they're going to do that. So they did. They like wired me the money. And I said, well, what am I going to talk about? She's like, well, write it on the plane. You're going to have 10 hours. So that's like I said. So I got on the plane. I decided what I was going to do. There was 156 people there. And then they said, oh, yeah, you can, invite them to take the next step. I thought, oh, I'll just invite them to the thing I invited those other people to do. And out of the 156, 110 of them said yes. And I was like, oh, my goodness, this thing is. So now I was like, oh, my gosh, in like 7 days, I was an international speaker, a 6-figure international speaker, as a matter of fact. And I got 3 more speaking engagements then. And I became an international speaker. And if somebody would have told me, that was 14 years ago. If somebody would have told me that in 10 years, not only would I travel all over the world speaking, I'd be teaching other people to do it, and that people would hire me to help them monetize their speaking career and get them booked, I would have never believed it.
I have really enjoyed our conversation. I think you've given so many lessons and tips to the people out there who are trying to figure out, their path to reach their highest achieving authentic self. Tell our listeners how they can find you. We'll put your links in the description, but I'd love for you to tell them just how to find you and how they can best engage with you for you to help them reach that next level.
I like to keep things nice and simple. So they can just go to my website, which is pattyfarmer.com. And my podcast is there. My magazine's there. The events are all there. All my social is there. So anything that they could possibly want would be there. So I can keep it nice and simple. So they can just choose their best way that they want to reach me.
And the domain is?
pattyfarmer.com.
pattyfarmer.com. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed having you. We'll have a lot more conversations because I know we have a lot to talk about.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.